let's get started with our session. It is exam prep session for Office 365 exams. So my name is Vladimir Melosky. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer, and I'm an MVP on Exchange Server. So today we have actually two sessions. The first one is called Part 1, which will actually focus mostly on the first exam called 7346, and the second one, which starts after 30 minutes break after this one, is the Part 2. So each of the sessions will be focused mostly on particular exam. In this session, we are going to cover all the best practices and all the tips and tricks regarding taking this exam. We'll also talk about the technology needed for this exam, and I will also share you my experience of how do I take the exams when I go to testing centers, or how do I prepare, so in order that you might have some takeaways from this session and you prepare successfully as well. We have enough time, so the exams which can be scheduled here are closing, I think, about 1:30 or 2 p.m. on Friday. So we still have time to take some of those exams and take the opportunity to have discounted price for the exam. So the objective of this session is to talk about Microsoft certification, especially for Office 365. And to talk about some exam tips and to introduce the exam. So we have two exams, as I mentioned. One is Managing Office 365 Identities and Requirements. So I would say this first exam is mostly focused on the infrastructure requirements. So this exam begins like you would begin in your real life by creating a tenant in an Office 365 environment, and starting step by step building and configuring that tenant and deploying services that you will need for some company. Now each of you have different strategies, different company scenarios, so not all of you have the experience, or let's say configure the settings that you would be required for the exam. So we have to learn other things that you don't have on your job in order that you prepare as much as more successfully for taking the exam. So as I mentioned, we have pretty much system configurations. See, some of them are more advanced, and some of them are just, like say, creating users, creating groups, which is what we do on a daily basis. The another exam, 347, is called Enabling Services. So this second exam assumes that you already have configured the Office 365 infrastructure. Is it that cloud only? Is it a hybrid scenario? And then we go on and we start using services, start configuring SharePoint, start configuring Exchange Online, Link Online. So these are the objectives for this second exam. Let's see how the exam is positioned into the overall certification path. So you see that this is one step before we get the highest MCSA certification. So this exam is needed, these exams are needed, that we get the MCSA on Office 365. So I have been getting questions here, like, do I need to take them in order and so on? You can take them in each order you like, but you get the MCSA title only when you complete both of the exams. Then if your daily job, let's say, is just working with Office 365, you can have that one, but if you also want to extend your knowledge so you can learn more, and you can take the exams on the Link server, which are exams 336 and 337. Now is Skype for Business, but it's still Link server exam if you take it into the testing center. And by taking these two exams you get, and previously taking the Office 365 MCSA, you will be MCSE Communication. If you are Exchange admin, then you take MCSA messaging track, which is exams 341 and 342. And if you work mostly with SharePoint, you will take exams 331 and 332, so you'll be MCSE on SharePoint. Those three MCSE, they still have online objectives, like Exchange Online, Shared Online, but they are mostly focused on the on-premise products. So this is also good to know. Now, on the left side on the slide, you might see the objectives. So what you should know in order to successfully pass the exam. We will go through them more in detail. This is just a quick overview. And you see which official Microsoft training is needed or recommended. It's not mandatory, but it's highly recommended that you are prepared well for the exam. You might notice on the slide that just one training is needed for 2 exams, which is good. So it's 5-day training, 40 hours, and it goes through all the objectives needed to be known for these exams. So let's say you take this training, 5-day, and then you decide which exam first you want to take, and you go one by one exams. This training is also equipped with the labs, which are hosted online. So you have, let's say, real-life environment of Office 365 and Azure, so you can really do all the labs needed to practice what you would need to know for the for these exams. Okay. One more information: if some of you need this MCSA, another MCSA is also title, which is MCSA for Windows 2012. So 346 can be used as substitute of the 412. Okay. Now let's start with 346. So as for any exam, the best way to prepare is 2 things: learning and practicing. Practicing means being confident with the menu and the interface of Office 365 for all the tasks which are done into the graphical user interface. So I could be confident if I have experience. By experience, I mostly think about practicing what different options in the graphical interface do. Now, where to take those practice? I guess everybody knows that the Office 365 plans have trials. So you can sign up for a trial and create your own tenant and start exploring the exam objectives, which are required for the exam, and start testing or learning about each one-by-one features. So this is what I do usually before I try to prepare like pack for my learning, so what to learn. First is very important that also we concentrate on what to practice. Okay. So as I mentioned, now on the Microsoft Learning website, which is microsoft.com/learning, there are all certifications listed. And for each certification, such as this one, 7346, they are skill measured. We are going to talk about these topics. I think it's a little bit small here. Okay. So here are the topics that we need to know in order to pass successfully the first 346 exam. Now, if you go and click on plus, you will see a little bit more details in what does each topic mean and want to learn in order to be confident and to know well this topic. Okay. On the slide, we may see how much percentage of the question will be of specific topics. So you see, we have 6 objectives, 6 group of questions, and each of them takes 15 to 20% of the questions of the exam. Okay. And the details about exam, as I mentioned, are on following link. So for some of these topics, I can prepare by creating my own trial plan for Office 365. Okay? It is not quite recommended that we use our current, let's say, production environment in our companies if we already use Office 365 for preparing for the exam, because some of the tasks we can just not do it, such as practicing hard deleting or soft deleting users and some other more complex environments. So it would be very nice if we use some combination of the trial Office 365 accounts and plus virtual machines connected to internet, which will simulate some local domain-based network that will connect to Office 365. So this would be nice if we are able to configure something like that in order that we test and that we learn about the topics which are required for this exam. Okay. So this is one resource what we could do. The another resource, I just have this several components here. This is something which is called Office Ignite Labs. So the name is the same with this conference, but actually Ignite in the past was an event of the Unified Communications Solutions. So this site was introducing the new Exchange and Link and Office 365. And the site has some part of the some labs, beginning from basing administering Office 365, for those of you who are still learning about this suite. And you also have, so the website is, you cannot see it well, but it's, let me just copy-paste this. http://labs.officeignite.com. So some of those labs are so-called click-through labs, which means there is no virtual environment or any physical environment behind it. It is just like Silverlight-based applications that guide you step by step. Okay? Why is that beneficial? Because for some scenarios we are going to talk about, such as ADFS, for example, or DearSync, maybe you still don't have time or you don't have resources to configure all these settings. Let's say for creating ADFS farm, you will need, for example, domain controller. You will need at least two virtual machines for ADFS farm. Then you'll need at least 2 more virtual machines for ADFS proxy. All of them needed to be connected to internet to have some communication, and that you test communication with the trial Office 365 account. So that's why these are the easy way that you just click through and you see step-by-step procedure how it's done. And they are also audio guided, so are very, very useful for learning. I use them as well when anything new appears, just to go and to see how some configuration is set up. Of course, it would be better if I have labs which are real, so hosted in real environments. So there are resources on that as well. I also use them. So this is a website called Channel 9. I guess some of you also know that. This is actually the website where the videos of the conferences such as TechEd and Ignite are posted. But the good thing is that not only videos. So for those of you who don't know this website, all the videos and PowerPoint slides from Ignite and from former TechEds, Link conferences, Exchange conferences, which also have a lot of Office 365 resources. So everything you can search here. Plenty of knowledge for different complex configuration settings with demos from previous conferences. And that's not all. On Channel 9, you also have labs. So if you go to channel 9, and for example, you go to events and choose the TechEd event, you might notice that the link and exchange conferences are not listed, but you just type into search box link conference or MEC for Microsoft Exchange Conference, you will get those listed as well. They also have Office 365 resources. So here I did some filtering, such as hands-on labs, and I chose the track for Office servers and services, and here you can see some of the labs, for example, configuring SharePoint online or Exchange online. You see you have plenty of labs here, and you see this hands-on lab, for example, is available online. So you click, and several windows will start to open where you log on to the virtual infrastructure. And a good thing here is that you get the manual, step by step, how to deploy some configuration, but also this lab is open for 90 minutes. So if you say, let's say you have already that scenario tried and you want to try something else, you already have prepared infrastructure, so you can try something by yourself, your own scenario, so to use this virtual environment as for your own testing, if it fits in this 90 minutes limit. Okay? If it expires, you start them again and so on. Okay. So how many of you are Office 365 consultants, which, let's say, put people, companies on board? Okay, not many. So, okay, good news for you that you already do this day by day. So you do the planning projects for Office 365. You plan how to migrate people and companies to Office 365, or you do configuration settings for hybrid environments. So you already have pretty much experience. So you already are confident about the graphical user interface and PowerShell, what you use, so the preparation time is less needed. For people who use Office 365 in their environment, it is also just fine because you have that interface, you use it day by day. The only difference is the consultancies, you do not do migrations, for example, every day. You don't do different hybrid scenarios day by day, but it's just okay because, as we mentioned, we have plenty of resources where we can learn and test in virtual environment how it is done. The good thing at the users of Office 365 solutions, so not the consultants, but the second group of IT people, is that you actually have daily contact with the solution. Consultant does the project, goes to another one, but you are most confident about monitoring, okay, maintaining, troubleshooting. So those topics on the exam, you will be mostly close to. So each of the work job has his own advantages on taking this exam. If you still do not have Office 365 in your company, that is also just fine, because by learning and by testing, you will be prepared to deploy this solution when it comes on the project schedule in the company. Okay, let's examine the topics. So the first group of the questions you will get about how to provision Office 365. Okay? And this is actually the group of the questions where you will pretty much fast learn, because the only thing you need to go is to Office 365 website, check about the product offerings, and you choose one plan. I would take E3 plan, Enterprise 3 plan for Office 365. And by using that plan, you, at the very same moment, create a tenant and start configuring your own testing Office 365 scenario. So that system is already provisioned in very, very fast time, in few minutes. So you can already start configuring emails, configuring people, sending email, receiving email. So it is just fine for getting this confidence about the user interface. Because you will be asked on the exam about configuring some settings. And if you do not practice enough to see what are the menus and options, you might be misled by some answer, for example, who looks like it is what you're looking for, but it's not. If you are confident about how graphic user interface looks like, then even if you do not remember, because of course we cannot remember everything, but you will know approximately how it looks like and how it is configured. Okay? So these are three groups in the first domain exam objective. These are the first three groups of the questions. So let's go one by one. So first, during the creation of the evaluation plan, you need your ID to log on the site, and you configure, you choose your tenant name. Here you put information about your, let's say, fiction company, and you get this on Microsoft.com top domain. Okay, so if you say, let's say, my company is called like Fabricam, so you get Fabricam on Microsoft.com. Okay, this is, as I mentioned, already functional. Tenant, so you can connect clients, send emails, and so on. And then you create users, and you should go to the menu and to check the about descriptions. Why? Because they are part of the objective in domain. Since they are part of the exam domains, you will be asked to choose a plan. Okay? Because it's there. It says you have to know the tenant subscription plans. Okay? And also about the licensing. I know that licensing usually goes to the salespeople. Okay, so they do the licenses, we do the IT pro stuff. But the licensing is here. So at least for exam, we have to learn it in order to configure licensing for specific users, which means we choose which type of products will be our solution licensed. So that's why I would say I'm reminding, do not underestimate any of these topics. These are listed into the exam objectives, and they has to be known for the exam. Okay. So this is actually some part of which, because many of the exams are made that correlate to the real world environment. Okay. What do you think? What would be the next step after we create the tenant, who is on Microsoft.com? So what next should we do? Yes. So we create our own domain or buy our own domain and integrate that domain into the Office 365. Okay. That's good. Again, since we have it here, and it's pretty much important because it's one of the basic steps you do in Office 365 deployment, most likely you will be asked to explain the procedure. Of course, you don't write on the exam the procedure, but you will have to choose about offered answers, about specify the domain name. So what does it mean? Which steps are included there? Okay. So since domain names are company ownerships, we have to confirm the domain. Anyone knows how we confirm that we own some domain? Okay, great. Okay. So you will be most probably asked how to confirm that. So we are good with that as well. You see, it's easy. We're already doing well on the exam. Okay. Woo. Okay. And then this component which says move ownership of DNS to Office 365, We will talk about it a little bit later. It means that any online service that we are going to use, such as Exchange Online, SharePoint, or Link, should have its own records. You will have to know which one in order that clients then connect to the online services such as how to discover and change online protection, or all of that. Okay. So we are good with this. We know this, okay? Great. Now the next thing is pilot users. Why I need pilot users for the exam? Because many companies we have still free spaces, if you like, free seats. Yeah. Because many companies are still evaluating the Office 365. They're still not sure are they going to deploy it, or they want to see the return of investment and cost investment, all of this. So that's why they deploy pilots. So most probably there will be scenarios where you configured pilot users for the company. So you will need to know what steps are involved. For example, whenever I hear about pilot, that means some test user created, but test user who needs to be functional. Okay? So after we have that domain, that means that we have to configure that test pilot user to have email address with the new domain and be able to send and receive email, or connect with Link client with its own SIP address for the pilot users. Okay? Then in the question there might be multiple applications listed, like workloads. So you have to know, depending on the scenario, of course, at the moment which workloads don't need migration. Okay. Then many companies need to check their local environment for migrating to Office 365. And there is one cool tool called Office 365 on-ramp readiness tool, who actually needs to be installed, and that tool makes the analysis and give us a report regarding the readiness of the company. Who has tried that tool? Okay, good. About half of the people. If you didn't do that, try to find some lab about it. I'm not sure I saw the lab about on-ramp tool, but if not, then you download the tool. Now again, we have to be sure that we do not interfere anything in our production network. So that's why I highly recommend that all the testing preparation we do for our exam, we do it actually on totally isolated test environment. So nothing connected to our company. So the problem with this Office 365 on-ramp tool is that we need to have some virtual environments, some test machines where this tool will test them and evaluate them. Why? Because for us to know how it looks like, most probably we might be asked about the tool. Will it be when to use it, okay, or how to use it, okay? So you have to know the pre-requirements for that tool. For example, this tool needs domain joined machine. So be careful if you see, for example, something that says workgroup machine, okay, and you say, okay, install Office 365 on-ramp readiness. But you can't. You need domain joined machine. Okay, so be careful on these preparations here. Okay. Then create a test plan. So most probably you might have some scenario where you want to deploy the pilot users. So are we going to use test plan or use the current users? Because some of the current users also can be configured in Office 365. And know that you can know how you can connect the existing email account for pilot users. So you create test user account in Office 365, but you can connect that account to your current solution, email solution. Okay, so this email will be downloaded to the new pilot user. So check the menu if you haven't done that. Go to the user interface and check, see how it is done, because it is on the list of the things that we should know. And one question regarding the office plan. I already said we have to know those plans. What is your opinion? Yeah, that's correct. E3. Okay. Okay. Next thing is here is question. Yes. Voice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Next thing regarding the offerings. You know that additional online products can be added to Office 365. Okay. So be sure you know about them. So the core suite is Exchange, SharePoint, Link Online, and Office 365 Pro Plus. Okay. But you also have also Yammer, you have Project Online. Okay, be sure you know them as well. You might be asked for different type of scenario, that they should be included depending on the company needs. Okay. So the next group of the questions, we are still at the next group of questions is planning and implementing networking and security. So the provisioning topic is behind us. Now we go to another topic that will be asked about on the exam, is planning and implementing networking and security in Office 365. So first we talked about the registration of the domain, which is part of the provisioning phase. And now the next topic is the DNS records. So actually all DNS records that we need in order that our clients successfully connect to the online services. The next group of the next topic, part of this group, is enable client connectivity to Office 365. So how clients connect once the system is already and DNS is configured. And the third one is manage administrator roles in Office 365, also very important to know. Okay, so during the learning process, make a list of all DNS records you have to configure in your DNS provider, such as your Exchange server. Of course, needs to, if you did have Exchange server hosted in your company, then of course MX record now should be different, not to point to your on-premise server, but to point to the Office 365. So that information you can find also into the graphical user interface and what information to put, and you can search it also on TechNet. Then you need also CNAME record for the Exchange in order that the name should be resolved into the IP address. You need AutoDiscover. Then you need link records in order that link automatically connects as well. So once you put the SIP address into the link client, that the link client goes online and resolves that and finds the appropriate link online service. And SharePoint sites also we have to edit their records in order that they are not hosted on premise anymore, but they are located online. So these are some scenarios you are going to be asked about about clients accessing the Office 365 solution. So what if you have clients in your own company and you have some type of proxy server which controls the access to the internet. In that case, that proxy server needs to be configured to allow anonymous access to Office 365 components and URLs. You must know which ports are used by the clients in order to access Office 365. What is the most common port? Actually, it will be 443, yes, correct. Okay. So be careful if, it is not listed in the exam objectives, but how about if you have like POP3 clients or IMAP4 that needs to connect for sending email, which port it was? Let's remember how it was in on-premise Exchange. 587. But not many enterprises use that. But yeah, I haven't seen it into the objectives, any POP3, but we have later IMAP discussion about IMAP4, so maybe it would be. Yeah. Okay. Okay. The next thing is regarding the bandwidth requirements, maybe some question about different providers and different settings. Okay. And internet connectivity established for clients. Okay. One of the questions that also will be later discussed is deployed desktop setup for previous Office clients. Why is that? If the company uses plan that it's including the Office clients as well, okay? So you might be asked about how this Office version will interact with the previous version of the Office suite which is installed on the machine. And maybe for the system requirements that you install the Office on the clients. Okay. Again, one more objective regarding the DNS. We didn't mention, so I will repeat once again, very important to know which DNS records needs to be edited or inserted for the Office, so the clients successfully connect. And one of the things would be the name of the domain. So the name of the domain, usually it is not recommended, and it should not be single label domain name. You know what is this? Just Fabricam and nothing, like not .com. Okay. The reason is because that name is not routable on internet, so you cannot connect possibly to read your email just using one single label domain name. Also, we should avoid the domain names which are not routable, such as local. Okay, so we can use local internally for some internal needs, but for connecting to Office 365 when we register, it has to be routable domain name.
Would you just use a VPN suffix with a VPN?
Sorry?
Would you just use a VPN suffix for the user?
It's not a problem. Internally, you can use anything. It is just when you create the new domain, it has to be routable, such as com, edu, and so on. Okay. Yeah. The other thing you might be asked is a split DNS. We know what it is. Split brain DNS. Yeah. That's correct. That's correct. So split brain DNS is if the DNS name, such as company.com, is used internally, both internally and externally. Now here the problem is how that will be resolved. So what we do is internally on our internal DNS server, we resolve those names into the private internal IP addresses. on the external DNS name, those DNS server, they are resolved to the public IP addresses. Actually, in this case, into the Office 365. So this is also one thing we have to know regarding the DNS planning that might be part of the exam. Now, we go to the topic now, which is not quite, let's say, common in every company. How much of you use rights management services? So not many. Okay. Yeah, we have to take our books a little bit and see how it works and see how it is configured. I know this is the actually active rights management has been for a while into the Windows infrastructure, and after some editions of Windows, it's already part of the operating system as it can be installed as a operating system component. So what does it? What it does? It actually encrypts and protects emails or documents, and it needs PKA in order that encryption is established. Okay, so whenever email or document is protected, nobody who is not allowed to do that cannot read it, print it, forward it, and so on. So now we have a challenge, not just installing the RMSS locally, but integrate it into the Office 365, and furthermore, in Exchange Online, Link Online, and Office integration, Exchange Online, and SharePoint Online. So here we will have to read about how to do that. Okay, the rights management service needs to be configured also in Office 365. Okay, and then we have to use the remote PowerShell for additional configuration steps. So applying the rights management service needs configuration settings, and we'll have to know which commands are involved. Now we go to another challenge, which is called PowerShell, where, of course, it is not possible that we just know all commands with all switches and so on. So what I do when I try to learn PowerShell for some specific product, before I start, actually I maybe should have begun to tell, as on any other exam, this exam also takes some time. So it takes some time, we get more close with the user interfaces, with the commands, and I know it takes even further more time that we learn the mostly used PowerShell commands which will be needed for creating users, configuring users groups, now configuring this rights management service. And what I do is actually I get from TechNet the list of the PowerShell commands which are relevant for specific topics, such as for information protection. And then I test again exclusively in test environment. I test some of them, and I test the switches. There is no way that maybe some of you is very good in remembering the commands, but actually to get the logic under the command. So which switches are for that command, what each switch means. Just try from each command to run it several times to see result, and it will find its place somewhere in our memory. Okay? When you get on the exam, you might get several similar commands. In that case, and you have to choose from which is the correct one. So in that case, I recommend do not hurry, but very slowly read them. There is an error somewhere in those commands. Okay? And as I mentioned, by testing those commands in your environment, you will know, let's say, who are the intruder answers. Yeah, okay. So most probably you will first you will spot the mostly wrong answer. Okay, that is what I do. And then they concentrate on some others. But the answer is somewhere here. Okay. Most probably some switch maybe is not existing in the PowerShell command. But if you go through the commands, you will see it's not too bad. So you will see what to do and what to configure. it takes a little bit time, so it's not something we can just do. But yeah, so this is a challenge because not everyone has it. Banks, maybe government institutions, and so on. It's not so common, but we have to know it for the exam. Okay, and so how to activate rights management service, how to configure it, and then how to, let's say, how to protect the document and how to send document, how to open the documents by this configuration. So this is something we have to try. I think just let me check. One of those labs I think already had it. So just for a quick overview. Yeah, data. Okay, so this is something in place. I think I saw it somewhere here. Whole discovery, cutover migration, happy deployment, and so on. Okay, try to find this. If not on TechNet, there is step-by-step procedure. Or if you attend this class, if you have a plan in the near future to go to this class, Microsoft training, it has it as a lab, so you can go step by step. But anyway, on TechNet, there is step-by-step procedure, so you can configure that one in your own test environment. So this is some of the topics that might take you a little bit time. Okay. Okay, we go to some more relaxed topic, permission model. So there are really just several permission groups, permission models, where you can assign a user. Okay, and this is not something which is difficult. So we have like different types of administrators. Okay. So most probably you will get some scenario question where it will say, you need administrator or user to perform this action. Okay, which group it should be a member of in order that action to be. So more relaxed question. There are just few of them, and you have groups such as global administrators, and you have groups such as billing administrator, which job is to make purchases of the licenses. You have password administrator who can reset everyone but not the global administrator. You can have service administrator, which is managing service requests, and user management administrator. So there are just about 5 roles. So pretty much straightforward, nothing difficult. If you go and open the graphical console, just go to the user sections and assign a role. And now here is another story, how to do it in PowerShell. Again, my recommendation is same as the previous. Get those commands on TechNet. You have the full syntax and use just for some scenarios. Usually each command has on TechNet some examples. So use and play a little bit, try several commands with, see what do they do. It's very, very quickly you will get the point, what is doing. Of course, some of the switches are not very oftenly used, so I'm pretty much sure that those extreme switch components will not be on the exam, but the idea is that you know how to get this administrative task done. Okay? So usually don't forget that some of the PowerShell commands in Office 365 have MSOL in the name. Okay, so you might get on the answer like something which is not with OL, which is some command which is similar, but it is for the on-premise only. Okay. So some of these assigning administrative roles commands would be get MSOL role, get MSOL user role, add MSOL role member, and so on. They're all on TechNet as well. Okay. So yes, you might be asked how to assign someone to be administrator, how to revoke that. that option as on. So this is pretty much not difficult. Another question, we already talked about this. You need to prove domain ownership. We already talked about this. So what was the answer? T. Yes. Okay. Okay. So it might be, how about if we talk about exchange, what would be? So the first one is, here is txt, okay? And let's say you want to change records for exchange as well. Is it possible that MX records is used for validation as well? Okay, okay. So if you need, let's say from 2, if you need to answer on, from 4, if you need to answer on 2, and you get MX here, then it's txt and MX as well, okay, if you need it for the email. Okay. Again, some of the topics which are relaxed when we talk about the graphical interface, still for the PowerShell, a little bit practicing. So how to configure password management. So I would advise you that you go through the graphical console, what is the default policy, okay, about the passwords, complex password. When you delete user, how much does it stay? Okay, so explore as much as possible. How I learned for the exam, I just go through the graphical console, and I just see, let's see what is this doing. Let's see what is this doing. I know it's not the fastest way to learn, but you get the more and more information, and you store them somewhere in memory. So whenever you ask, you say, I saw that. I know where it is or what it is. Okay? Yeah. Sure. Yes. No problem.
Virtual Academy.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, we have the list as a list of resources of Virtual Academy. Yeah.
There's like a specific one. It's like manage Office 365 identities.
Okay.
It's really, I thought it's about a year old, but it's really good about explaining each session.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. We have it as a list of resources, but I have set it at the very beginning. Yeah. Virtual Academy has very good videos on configuring those. Yeah. Okay. So cloud identities here are basically users and groups in Office 365. They're called cloud identities, which means they exist in Office 365. We are still not here getting to the point where we have local AD synchronizing with cloud and Azure AD. So we are still on the on the cloud level. So these are only cloud identities. Okay. So this part of the questions, mostly you will get like how to configure like password expiration and user, how much does it stay if it's deleted, and then some configuration regarding the PowerShell. Again, PowerShell needs a little bit practicing. Here they are. This is the same as we have in the graphical console. Expirations, policies, password complexity. Nothing new. We already know that. Just we have different interface to manage it in Office 365. Okay. Also, if you open when you open the Office 365, you have just some videos and also an NVA. Videos about administration centers, so which section they are in the user interface. So it's very, very good that we just go through them, see what is it doing. If we see some hidden or not so commonly often option, just check it, see what it does, just to know. Okay, one also very important, and let's be careful here a little bit, bulk import, which means we have approved the project, so we want our company, which has multiple users, maybe there are 1,000, 5,000, and so on, and more. So we want to import them into the cloud, into Office 365. So of course we don't do that one by one. So we create a file that needs to be imported. So please be careful. You learn how this file looks like. Okay, what is the name? Does it have extension? Which extensions? Okay, which command you use to import that file? So all this process, when it says bulk import, go through that process from the beginning to the end. Create a file with 2-3 users. Be careful how file is formatted. This is very important. Most probably you will get asked about that. Okay. Which components should you have into this file? This Azure Graph API might be just information for connecting developer application with the Azure AD. Soft delete, so how much time the account will stay, and multi-factor authentication, so how it is configured and in which scenarios do I need it. Maybe for some companies, let's say, where the employees, when they go outside, and we are concerned about those people losing their computers and maybe passwords, so we implement multi-factor authentication. So let's see how it is done as well. Some more user management. Okay. I will go maybe much more faster through this slide because this is something we already do day by day in our on-premise environments. Just we have to see how it is done into the Office 365. Again, PowerShell, part of the of the exam objectives. Once again, don't forget to go through all these steps. And if you have some option, then just be careful step by step. How do they go? Okay. Yes.
Do the exams have any hands-on components, like you have to execute stuff?
Well, you mean to type something?
Yeah, actually, set up a certain type, so where you actually have to build a command and execute something and get a certain result.
I don't know how to say. I don't know if I can say, but typically I will answer like this. If you are confident, as I was giving instruction with the user interface, that would be not a problem for you at all. Okay. Even if it exists, you would maybe, if it exists, you would have the same console you have it on your testing environment, on your environment where you prepare for the exam. So you just go through that, and that's it. Yeah. So the confidence is the thing that we need for the exam, and we get the confidence by going often and trying as much as possible to test through these components, how do they work, and to commands. When I say experience, let's say many of you might be experienced, but in part in your organization, which part of the office which your organization uses, and that is quite nice because you already know very good one part of this exam. Now you only have to focus on those other things. Okay, so this is also just yes.
Is there a source for sample test questions so you can get a sense for what? I mean, it's great that you're showing us examples here.
Yeah.
Is there a place to go online? Just it's good to get a sense for how the questions look.
Yes. So in our study hall, we have a classroom with the sample questions. So you can go. Sorry.
These two exams aren't in the labs.
These are not in the labs?
I couldn't find them.
Oh, I have to check that. Okay. But because the gentleman was asking about the experience, I guess, you can maybe try in the study hall Exchange, for example, on-premise exam, just to see how the experience of the testing is. Yeah. because it will be the same everywhere. Is it on-premise or Office 365 or Windows Server? The experience should be similar. Yes, sir.
How many questions are there typically? What's the pass or fail?
The pass number is 700. Yes, 700 points. Yeah.
How many questions?
It is not always the fixed number.
Oh, okay.
I think about 40 something to 50 something and so on.
And then there's a percentage that don't really count, right?
Yeah, you cannot see, let's say, during the
Test, yeah.
yeah, but it has to be some percentage that you get at the end the result. Yeah. Okay. Another simple question with these groups. So user 1 must not be able to reset the password of other administrators. Which administrator role is this user? Okay, good. Because only the global has this permission. Take away, know the differences between the admin roles and permissions. Now we go to the more advanced part, which is moving our users to the cloud with option that still we have our on-premise infrastructure. Now this is the thing that requires a little bit more studying and more preparations. Okay. So 4 groups of questions we have here. First is prepare on-premise Active Directory for DirSync. So DirSync is a tool that actually takes the accounts from an Active Directory information from on-premise and puts them into the Azure Active Directory, so puts them in the cloud. So this synchronization is continuous all the time. So which companies use this? Also be sure to know for which scenario this applies. For companies who still have applications that rely on local Active Directory. And you have also Exchange, SharePoint, and Link Online that is stored in the cloud. So what would you do is that people who work with the on-premise applications, they log on locally, okay, and they use those applications, but when they read email, then they are authenticated in the cloud. So this is the synchronization going. And the source of actually also you have to know how the synchronization goes. So whenever you change anything to Active Directory, it replicates up into the Office 365. Okay. So what we have to know is how to set up. What are the steps of setting up? So your company says we want to move part of our services into Office 365, but still we need some applications that use local AD. So how to do that? So there we will see two groups of questions. One is groups of questions with DirSync, which requires one machine, one appliance to run this DirSync tool. Again, know the requirements as for any software, because we need to install it. You have to know which are requirements for the DirSync. Be sure you know them, because you might get the question, you need to install this. Okay, what are the pre-requirements for that machine? Okay. So one of the things don't allow to be caught catch on some point that this is 64-bit only. Okay, so it can be installed only on 64-bit machine. DirSync. Be careful when you read on some small questions. Okay, so this is the prepare Active Directory. We'll go now to the preparation process. Then, so because just one question, because when I was preparing for this session, I was told that I can extend it to the part 2, but you might have other plans. So how many of you like that we squeeze this and we complete, so you go on some other session? Or you want to, who is that we complete part 1 for one exam? Okay, who will stay on the second one? Okay, good. So in order no one to be unhappy, I might go through the main points of everything, and then the next class, for all of you who stay, I will return back with more details. Okay? So everyone is happy with those.
Part 2, you tell us all the answers.
Yes. Yes.
We're good.
Correct.
We can use the half hour in between.
Yeah, okay, okay. Okay. So first group of questions will be about preparing AD for DIRSync, and here we'll see some tools for evaluating AD before we do the DIRSync. The next one is setting up, and the third one is managing when DIRSync is installed. So usually in the documentation on TechNet, on our documentation, you will see that this is like a solution, set it and forget it, so you configure it, and it, yes?
But the DIRSync tool is replaced by the AD.
Previous? Should I go back?
No, it's just a question. The DIRSync tool is replaced by the AD sync tool.
Yeah, now it's,
So
it says, yeah. It is, you download that tool from the Office 365 portal, actually, so you always get a updated version if there is any. Okay, so this is called, yeah, we call it DIRSync, we know it from the history, but yeah, WAAD, Windows Azure AD Sync tool. Thank you. Okay. Once again, we repeat, before we go and set up the tool, that we are careful because these non-routable domain names are not supported. Now the next thing is clean up existing objects. What does it mean? If AD has any attributes that are maybe has some issues and we do not filter them out during the synchronization process, we can use filtering to decide which AD attributes are synchronized, then those might end up into the Windows Azure AD. So this is why there are some tools, you will see them, that might do the check of that AD state and tell us how to remediate that issue in AD. Okay? Then we can plan for filtering in AD. You might be questioned for specific scenario. Maybe some attribute is needed, maybe some is not needed. So you should answer how to get rid of it or how to insert it. So the filtering might be the answer. And now support for multiple forests. Be careful. This tool is for one forest only. So this tool actually works on a basis of forefront identity manager. So if you have multiple forests, you have to do the synchronization using the forefront identity management. The other option, as we mentioned, the configuring matching of the filtering, and then you identify which. So after the synchronization, you identify synchronized attributes. Will you use password synchronization? So would you like that passwords are synchronized as well? If they are synchronized, then you can also use the online service with the same password. But you have to be careful. The AD password policy doesn't synchronize with is different with policy with the Office 365. So this is something we need to be careful. Then again, there is information here about the installation requirements. So be sure what do you need as a prerequisites before you install the DIRSync tool. I call it DIRSync WAAD tool. Okay. So which actions actually do the synchronization? Create, modify, delete. You can do schedules. You can schedule synchronization. How to do that? Okay. Be sure you know that. You need to know how to force the synchronization. You might be asked, you need to do the synchronization now. So which command to use? Okay. So this is something you also have to know. So you see, the good strategy for preparation is just to read objective topics, exam topics from the Microsoft Com/Learning, and just make yourself a list of the resources such as TechNet, virtual labs, some sessions, and always very recommended that you have your own environment for testing. That you can, whenever you have free time, just turn it on and test, go through the menu. As much as times you go through the menus and through the options, you are more confident and you get more information into the memory. Okay, and you always try to think some scenarios of these exam objectives. Okay, how would I use this into my company? Why it would be used for? Let's say who in my company would be global administrator, who would be password administrator. Let's try how it works. So all these objectives should be mapped to some scenario. Again, nothing in production, please. One PowerShell. Again, you need to force AD synchronization immediately. What command would you have to run? Sorry?
Start online posts.
Okay, great. Excellent. Once again, I would encourage you, especially some of you who have, let's say, more experience with the product, no matter if it's in your company or if you're a consultant. I would encourage you you have 3 more days to take some of these exams at least, or both two if you like, because as I mentioned, just go through these topics. Okay, go through these topics and see what would be and how is your knowledge about each of these specific topics. I know maybe for you most challenging will be the rights management services. I'm pretty much sure about that one. And about the DIRSync and the last one, ADFS, also might be more challenging. Okay, we have 2 minutes more. So if you like, I can go fast through this one. And everyone who wants that we go more in detail, then you can stay into the next. So what is ADFS? It is a service that can be used in hybrid scenarios as well. And the idea is that I have single sign-on functionality, which means wherever I log on, okay, I can log on from anywhere on the cloud or on my local company, and the experience is seamless. I need infrastructure for this. I need ADFS machine inside of my company for my internal users. And I need ADFS proxy, which is a machine put into the perimeter network for all the people who are located outside on the internet at this moment. So this is the technology. This is the good thing, so single sign-on. What is bad thing? If ADFS is down, you cannot possibly log on. So that's why we will talk on the next class. We'll talk about high availability, because you have to have high availability for ADFS. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you cannot log on to your network if you have only just one machine. Okay, we will go after the break through the steps of how to configure ADFS. So how to configure ADFS machines and how to configure ADFS proxy servers. And I have 1 more minute. If you have any questions, you can come over here after this 1 minute. So the last thing which will be asked is about how to troubleshoot. So you will be most probably asked about which report to use in any scenario where there's an issue. I know that it might be for you a little bit. Okay, so you have different logs. You have portal, administrative portal, where you can see the status of the services. Here you cannot quite, simulate like in virtual environment. Let's say when I take exams for the on-premise products, I do some bad thing in order to corrupt machine, and then I do the troubleshoot. Now the services which are offered by Office 365 are in the cloud, so I cannot possibly reboot anything. Okay, hopefully. So I will talk about these tools. This is very interesting point. You have to know what does it mean. Okay. So if you, sorry? You see there is a difference. These are empty and this is full. Like, this is service restored. So if you, when you create your own test portal, okay, go to the administrative dashboard and you can see the all explanations. So this might be most probably green all the time, but you will see all other signs, and each of them explained. So just learn about them and see what it is. Okay. So this conference also has a breakout session Office 365 and some hands-on labs. You can check them. And I and my colleagues are at training center right next door. Okay, so thank you so much. See you in the half an hour. Thank you.